February 22nd, 2026. The mountains above Tapalpa, in the Mexican state of Jalisco. A military operation high in the pines before dawn. One man was carried out of it wounded, loaded into a helicopter that raced him toward Mexico City. He never arrived. By the time the sun came up, the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere was gone. Then the country came apart. Roadblocks went up, more than 250 of them, across 20 states. In Cancun, cars burned on the highway to the airport. Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city, pulled its people off the streets and fell silent. Before the violence burned itself out, more than 70 people were dead. 25 of them were National Guardsmen. That was the cost of killing Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, the man the world knew as El Mencho, the head of the most powerful cartel on the continent, with a $15 million American bounty on his head. And in the next range of mountains over, in Michoacan, a 29-year-old was watching the same news as everyone else. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't running. He was doing the math. His name was Abraham Jesús Ambriz Cano. And in the weeks that followed, as the country asked who could take the throne El Mencho had left empty, his was a name spoken in the same breath as the giants, which was strange, because he was none of them. This is not his story yet. His story starts where they all start down here, in the dirt. They call it the Tierra Caliente, hot country, a low, volcanic corridor that runs through Michoacan, Guerrero, and the state of Mexico, settling into the valleys between the mountain ranges like a wound that won't close. The air hangs heavy down there. The soil is dark and rich. Avocado trees run to the horizon in every direction. Green gold, the locals call it. And the lemon groves run beside them for miles. From a distance, it looks like farm country. Up close, it's a battlefield with crops planted on top. This is the ground that made El Mencho. He was born in Aguililla, a few ridges over, into the kind of poverty that doesn't leave a man much. He got himself north to California, got deported back, and came home understanding exactly what this dirt was good for. He built an empire out of it, out of blood and fentanyl. And on March 16th, 1997, in the city of Apatzingan, the same hot country, the same red dirt, a boy was born named Abraham Jesús Ambriz Cano. Apatzingan is not a place that lets a man stay out of things. By the time that boy was old enough to carry a rifle, his hometown had become the center of one of the ugliest turf wars in Mexican history. He came up inside it. The war had two sides. On one, the Jalisco New Generation cartel, CJNG, El Mencho's machine, grinding its way into Michoacan, taking roads, taking towns. On the other, a loose coalition called the Carteles Unidos, the United Cartels, thrown together to stop them. Flying under that second banner was a group called Los Viagras. Los Viagras didn't begin as a cartel. They began as a promise. Back in 2013, ordinary people across Michoacan had hit their limit. The extortion, the kidnappings, the Knights Templar cartel taxing farmers on their own land by the acre. So they picked up hunting rifles and whatever else they had, called themselves auto defenses, self-defense forces, and took their towns back. The government tried to fold them into something official. It didn't hold. Some men went home. Others looked at the territory they now controlled and decided to keep it. The same roads they defended against the cartels, they started taxing themselves. By the time Abraham Ambriz Cano fell in with Los Viagras, the promise was long dead. They were a criminal outfit now, and their enemy, their whole reason to exist, was the CJNG. So that is where he learned the business, from inside a war against it. Which roads the CJNG moved on, which villages they'd bought, which officials belonged to them. He got close to a commander named Luis Barragan Chavez, LR5, who ran a faction called Los Reyes. Remember that. Everything he knew as their enemy. Then the CJNG came for Apatzingan. Explosive drones overhead, armored trucks on the road, no interest in talking. And Ambriz Cano watched all of it. He watched, and he counted the cost. The intelligence files would flag one thing that set him apart from every other young gunman in the country. When the CJNG finally came for him, they didn't want him for his trigger finger. They had plenty of men who could pull a trigger. They wanted what was in his head. The roots, the networks, the internal weak points of the coalition that had spent years trying to bring them down. In the cartel world, switching sides isn't betrayal. It's a resume. By 2022, the war had turned. The CJNG had stopped raiding and started consolidating, swallowing ground Los Viagras had held for a decade, making commanders disappear, pulling old alliances apart at the seams. Men who had stood shoulder to shoulder were now calculating who they could still afford to trust. Ambriz Cano did his math, and he crossed. They didn't hand him a rifle in a corner. They made him a regional coordinator for the pipeline running north into the United States, Colima and Jalisco, the routes that mattered. Not a soldier, not even a field commander in the usual sense. A logistics architect. In an operation moving billions of dollars in product a year, that role was worth more than 100 gunmen. He was 24 years old, and the thing that made him priceless was the same thing they would never quite forget. He had come to them from the other side. That kind of arrival is never clean. He announced himself the way this generation does. On camera, in December 2022, a video went up. Ambriz Cano stared straight into the lens and took apart a local commander, a man he accused of selling them out. His voice was flat. This wasn't anger. It was an execution carried out on a man's reputation, broadcast to every set of eyes in Michoacan that needed to understand where the lines fell now. Then came a second video, and this one didn't need words. He'd assembled his crew and laid out the hardware. Analysts who later studied the footage said they could pick out a Barrett anti-materiel rifle, a weapon built to punch through armored trucks and bring down aircraft, an FN belt-fed machine gun, an AKMS plated in gold. These are not the guns you find at a roadside checkpoint. Every piece was placed. Every frame was composed. It was a message, and it wasn't aimed at the government. It was aimed at every man who had once called him an ally, and it came with a name. They called him El Yogurt. His unit became the Operativa Yogurt, the Yoguriza, and inside the cartel by another name entirely, Los Indestructibles, the Indestructibles. Menace, packaged to travel. It traveled a lot farther than Michoacan. By 2023, the map has stretched. Colima, then Jalisco, then, this is the part that stops you, Quintana Roo, Cozumel, Cancun, the Caribbean beaches on the far side of the country, more than 1,200 miles from the hot country where he'd started. How do we know that? Because his own people announced it. In music, in Mexico's underworld, a narco corrido isn't entertainment, it's infrastructure. 3 minutes of brass and accordion that work as a press release, a recruitment ad, and a flag planted in the ground all at once. It isn't sung for radio programmers. It's sung for rival operators, for young men deciding who to run with, for whole neighborhoods being told, politely, who owns the street now. There is a corrido called La Yoguriza. A singer named Chicho Castro put it on record. And the lyrics do exactly what a territorial claim is supposed to do. They name him. They name Apatzingan, where he was born, and they walk his flag through the places his people had reached. Tequila, Cozumel, Colima. A man doesn't get a song like that written about him unless the song is meant to be heard. But nothing showed how far the brand had really traveled, like what happened in one particular town. A town famous for one thing. The thing that put his name on bottles all over the United States. Tequila, November 2025. A private estate in Zapopan, just outside Guadalajara, the Hacienda La Castañeda, a rodeo ground they call a lienzo charro. The man throwing the party was turning 45. His name was Diego Rivera Navarro, and he was the sitting mayor of Tequila. To get in, you followed 2 rules. You handed your phone to someone at the door. And you swore that whatever you saw inside stayed inside. What happens in the Linzo Charo stays in the Linzo Charo. Somebody broke both rules. The footage that reached Oscar Balderas, a reporter at the Mexican daily Milenio, shows the mayor up on the stage beside Chicho Castro, the same singer, the same song, belting out the words, "Pura gente del Señor Mencho." He shouts, "Nothing but El Mencho's people here." He wasn't just a fan. According to the federal case file, Diego Rivera Navarro had agreed to hand the CJNG 40 million pesos a year, about $2 million American dollars, pulled straight out of the public treasury, in exchange for the cartel's muscle in putting him in office to begin with. And the muscle had a name, the Operativa Yogurt. When one of the biggest tequila makers on earth, Jose Cuervo, refused to pay what the mayor's people demanded, it was El Yogurt's men who made the threat real. They arrested Rivera on February 5th, 2026, 17 days before El Mencho died. He faces charges of organized crime, kidnapping, and extortion. A narco state, caught on a hidden camera. No screenwriter would dare invent it. The mayor was the show. What El Yogurt built was quieter and far bigger, and it ran all the way down to the sea. Find the western edge of Mexico, where Michoacán, Jalisco, and Colima all run into each other, and the mountains drop straight down toward the Pacific. It's steep country. The roads are bad. The ridges are thick with brush. And at the bottom of all of it sits the port of Manzanillo, the busiest seaport on Mexico's Pacific coast, a place where cargo from all over the world comes ashore. Most of that cargo is exactly what it says it is. Furniture, electronics, container ships out of Asia, but tucked inside that legal river of freight, this is what American and Mexican investigators have found, moves a steady supply of precursor chemicals out of China and cocaine up from Colombia. The raw material, the door into Manzanillo, belonged to other men. In October 2021, the Treasury named two of them, the brothers Aldrin Miguel and Jose Jesus Jarquin, for running product through that port. They controlled the gate. El Yogurt controlled everything that came after it, the corridor climbing out of the port and up into the mountain labs. He wasn't the door, he was the highway. Follow one shipment, a chemical order leaves a plant in Jiangsu, China. A container reaches Manzanillo. It climbs the corridor into the Michoacán highlands. It enters a laboratory. It becomes fentanyl. It crosses the border. In 2023, synthetic opioids killed more than 72,000 Americans. El Yogurt is one link in that chain. Not the first, not the last, but a link with a name, sanctioned by the Treasury, tracked by the DEA, flagged by Mexico's own security cabinet. And to hold a corridor like that, he built something the cartel world had never quite seen. Not a gang, not a crew of local shooters, a small army. To build a unit at that level, El Yogurt did what almost no operator his age would think to do. He went recruiting outside Mexico. Reporters at Milenio pieced together how it worked. The messages went out over WhatsApp, straight to the phones of former Colombian soldiers, not just any veterans, specialists, men trained in explosives, in military intelligence, in close quarters urban combat. The pitch was simple and professional. High pay, on time, every time. These were not street kids with borrowed pistols. They were career soldiers who had come up in one of the longest running counterinsurgency wars in the hemisphere, Colombia's grinding decades against the FARC and the ELN. They knew things a Mexican sicario simply did not. And El Yogurt, sitting on the kind of money that corridor threw off, could pay whatever it took to bring them north. Mexico noticed. Omar Garcia Harfuch, the country's security chief, said it plainly. There was a clear pattern now. Criminal groups reaching into Colombia for exactly this kind of man. And Mexico had opened a channel with Bogota to shut the pipeline down. A regional cartel operator, barely 30, had built a fighting force stiffened with foreign military professionals, and one government had to call another to deal with it. And the place where he assembled that force, deep in the Michoacán highlands, was not neutral ground. The people there were not bystanders. That would matter the morning the Navy came. it is still dark when they move. 6 agencies close on the mountains of Chiniquila: the Navy, the Army, federal prosecutors, the National Guard, Michoacan State Forces, tightening a ring around a mining hamlet called Huitzantla. They came because the locals called them in. The Marines step into the village, and the village opens fire. What follows is not a raid. It is a battle. When the shooting finally stops, 12 of El Yogurt's men are dead. 3 Marines are down. 9 more of his people are in cuffs, some of them women, all of them in body armor. 4 of the dead are Colombian, career soldiers, a long way from home. Then the photographs went around the world, because some of those Colombian veterans, men carrying Barrett rifles built to kill armored trucks, were wearing flip-flops, rubber sandals, chanclas. The internet laughed. A meme by nightfall. Then you read the casualty count again. 3 of Mexico's naval special forces, wounded by men in sandals. That incongruity is not a joke. It is the whole story of what cartel violence has become: asymmetric, improvised, lethal, and indifferent to how it looks. The village wasn't finished. As the troops tried to move the 9 prisoners out, residents flooded the road to block them. Men, women, children. When that failed, someone buried explosives in the dirt tracks and dug trenches across the roads. This was a criminal cell with a social base. El Yogurt was not among the dead. He was not among the captured. He had slipped into the Sierra before the helicopters were down. Inside the CJNG, walking out of a blow like that means something. Did he have a warning? An informant inside one of those agencies? Or did his men just fight long enough to cover the door while he ran? We don't know. And the honest version of this story doesn't pretend to. 9 months later, the throne he was supposedly circling came empty for real. And all spring, one question ran under everything in that world. Who takes it? His name was in every answer. He held the corridor. He ran the only CJNG cell with real foreign soldiers in it. He had walked out of a Navy assault that should have finished him. On paper, he looked like a contender. Then, on July 23, 2026, the United States Treasury published a chart, an org chart of the new CJNG, who sits where now that Mencho is gone. At the top, Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez El Pelon, also called El 03, El Mencho's own stepson, the son of the boss's wife, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, a U.S. citizen, a $5 million reward on his head, named by American intelligence as the cartel's leader from the day Mencho died. Below him, the number 2, El Sapo, Hugo Gonzalo Mendoza Gaitan, still free, still running. Then Audius Flores Silva, El Jardinero, who might have made his own claim, except Mexican forces grabbed him in Nayarit on April 27 and put him in the Altiplano while Washington moved to extradite. Under them, a third rank, La Firma, La Galina, El Tarjetas, Castillo Rodriguez. Read that chart top to bottom, and one name is missing. El Yogurt. Washington left him off it entirely, filed him away as a regional operator. The security analyst, David Saucedo, floated a theory that Valencia may have helped hand Jardinero to the government to clear his own path, and that a committee ran the cartel for a while before Valencia closed his grip. However it happened, the man who built the highway never got the crown. Why not? Because the thing that made El Yogurt priceless was the same thing that would always keep him out. He had come to the CJNG from the other side. He wasn't family. He wasn't there at the founding. He was a man who had spent his early years fighting the very cartel he now served. And in that world, that kind of memory doesn't fade. It waits. His knowledge of the enemy's roads and networks made him a weapon worth more than 100 gunmen. It also made him a man the bloodline would never fully trust with the keys. The crown was never going to be handed across that line. So look at what he's left with. Right now, El Yogurt is fighting to hold his corridor, and the people trying to take it from him are the Carteles Unidos, led by a man called El Abuelo, Juan Jose Farias Alvarez. The United States has a $10 million reward out for him. On July 1st, 2026, American prosecutors indicted his son and his nephew. And here is where the whole thing closes back on itself. El Abuelo came up out of the same 2013 self-defense movement, the autodefensas, that gave the world Los Viagras, the outfit that raised El Yogurt in the first place. The farmers who once picked up rifles to take their towns back are now the enemy at his door. He didn't inherit an empire. He inherited a war over a stretch of mountain road. So where is he right now? There is no report of his arrest. There is no report of his death. As of today, Abraham Jesús Ambriz Cano is still out there in the same mountains that have swallowed fugitives for generations, where the roads run out and the ground takes over. He is 29 years old. He watched a kingpin fall and a stepson take his place. He watched his own name left off the chart, and none of it has taken him off the board. Somewhere in Mexico tonight, he is watching, and he is doing the math. That's not a dramatic device. That's the state of the record.